interesting when I think about the statistic that was laid out. I think Lauren said it earlier, that this was the highest year of overdose ever, right? Like, I think was this a record?
93,000.
Yeah, it was like 93,000. It was ridiculously high. If we had paid attention to kids a long time before and offered them recovery and support, who's to say, that doesn't play a role in why we sit and talk about numbers like 93,000? Like, we have never really put the investment and the energy into this. So, like, I mean, in a way, I look at the school in a lot of senses as very preventative, because now you're dealing with addiction at a stage when it's still manageable. There are stages to addiction, early, middle, late. I'm trying to frame them out as, when people are late stage and they're overdosing all the time and you're constantly pulling them out of a state of life and death, I mean, it's hard to recover. The hopeless level is high, the anxiety's high, depression's high. It's hard to come back from that. So we are excited to be working with kids at a place, hopefully, where they haven't progressed that far yet. Because we know the disease progresses. Look at the numbers. I mean, the numbers bear it out. And we can do better. So I know for us, we are certainly, banking on the fact that maybe this is the small start of doing something better. Maybe something that can grow, that can replicate. And again, we're right at the ground level. I know there's some other things I want to say about the school, but I'm thinking I would love to come back with this group a year from now and say, here's how we did, and we're, kind of what we've learned and where we're going to go from there. But, so we are opening in the fall. We do have, the enrollment process is open. We've talked to some families. We do actually have one enrolled student for the summer. And so we've been open a very short time. And his mom happens to be here, and you said you would be willing to just kind of say hi, so are you okay with that? Is that okay?
He's using marijuana quite a bit, drinking on occasion. This has been going on since probably 8th grade. And the school district is very helpful in some respects. In others, they weren't. And he was part of the disciplinary process, been involved with the courts here in Plymouth. And school was just not working well for him. He also is classified as emotionally impaired since a very young age. And his IEP wasn't helpful. Nothing seemed to be working. And we actually just found out, credit-wise, he should be a senior this year. But I think he's at the very end of 10th grade. But he did participate in the recovery high school, one class so far, and he actually got a 93% at the end of the class. His self-esteem, I can tell he is very excited and happy about school. He's looking forward to school starting again. I actually probably would have dragged him here tonight, except that he's up north with his dad. But he's still using at this point, and I'm very grateful that you have that approach. Because I actually, even though I've known Brian a very long time, I knew about his planning for the high school, and I actually assumed when Brian said, hey, did you think about our school? And I'm like, what? Because I thought you could go to treatment first. That was just something I assumed, and I've worked in the field for a long time too. So I'm very grateful for that approach.
Well, and I wanted, Michelle and I have been Michelle back kind of with me just on this conversation. I can get up. I was thinking we've been talking about how are we going to help him get to a place where he has a sustainable recovery, and And so, I don't know if you want to kind of mention, because I think it kind of helps summarize, like, what are we doing with him?
Yeah, so I've been working with you guys for, I'm not saying his name, for a couple months now. And we have a recovery plan, we're working on recovery goals, we're kind of working towards that recovery community, knowing that he's going to be enrolled in the fall, and that you do need to have willingness to be in recovery, to be part of the recovery high school. And he does have that. And, right now, what I'm gonna be doing with him is just introducing him to recovery. We're gonna go to, I don't know if you guys have heard of Marijuana Anonymous, but that's another 12-step program. They have that. And the cool thing about MA is that they have Zoom meetings going every day, all across the country. So he's actually excited about going to a meeting in California. There's meetings in Poland if we want, so I don't know if we're gonna have machines with we might just, So with him, what we're mostly doing is working on some life skills right now, talking a lot about recovery, and I'm working on getting him connected to a recovery program. So that's where we're gonna start.
And so, like, if we take this as kind of a case, I mean, everything, ideally, you want someone, coming in the door, being in a sober state, that's all the time. But, in this case, we also knew family was closely connected to recovery. We had time before the opening, and we're setting, kind of the stage for him to be like, all right, you're a first kid, you're gonna have to like toe the line here, and so, interestingly, he's excited about being the first kid, right? So he's got some motivation, and we're gonna work with him on that. But I want to be, so when we talk about criteria of mission, I also want to point out, we're embracing multiple pathways, like, we're not necessarily concerned about what your recovery path is, but more that you're on one. So, the orientation of how someone gets there, and there's a lot of different ways to get there, right? I mean, there's refuge, there's SMART, there's, self, whatever. There's a lot of different pathways to get there, that's okay. What we want people to do is to be in a place where graduation is a possibility, that they're a good, that they're an asset to the school community, that they're not, if they're out there still kind of wrecking it and hitting it, it's gonna be an issue, right? But our stance and our lens, and that's gonna be, look, for step one is, we're giving you the opportunity to kind of, navigate these paths. If you need additional support, then we'll find you some treatment in addition to, you're gonna have school, you're gonna have recovery support, you're gonna have alternative peer groups, you're gonna have an academic mentor. If you need to get some additional therapy or treatment, that's great, if we continue down that path. But we're not gonna kick him out. And I wanna be real clear about the point of, our goal here is to keep kids in school, not kick them out. Obviously, if you create a threat or a problem, then, that's different. But all told, we're looking to find ways, and it's important, if a family is interested in this, the family's gotta be kind of interested in then being a participant that way and active and engaged, right? We're not gonna be able to do this, all by ourselves. We're gonna need to be able to kind of work with a family and have them understand the nature of the disease and the recovery process, that it's not gonna be, it's not gonna be a straight line up, and it's probably not gonna be a straight line down if things aren't going well. But we're gonna need to work together. I think Michelle mentioned village approach. We're gonna need to work together to get to a place where ideally, the best experiences in recovery are people that have that moment of clarity where they just go, wow, I've had enough of this. And even if I don't know what to do, I've had enough of this, but I also know that the support's here, and I gotta do something. I gotta change. Something's gotta change. Best place to be. Even if it's not the happiest place to be, it's probably the best place to be. And so, and we wanna be there for them. We wanna help them, support them in the areas that we think we can be effective. It does kind of lend itself to, although we have the expertise, we're not a clinical program either. We're a recovery and support program in a school. So therefore, we, like in his case, we would strongly support the family if he's struggling get some additional support and help therapeutically if he needs it, if he's not able to kind of maintain anything on his own. And so I imagine they would work with us on that. And so like that's the kind of interaction that we want to have with families. Look, we're going to give this every shot that we can, as long as when we see problems starting to develop, that we're able to kind of work together to figure out a solution. So I've kind of worked with about 6 families and about 5 of them thus far. Their kids were in pretty significant crisis and needing to go to like residential treatment, which all of them did. Which lends itself to the point that I really wanted to make, which is, the school is new, but we're not new at this. And so, and what I mean by that is I'm clear, just as I was clear when I got started in this business decades ago, there's not enough resources around on what to do with kids when they're in crisis. So, so I wasn't all that surprised that people started reaching out to me and saying, hey, what about this school? And then when I kind of learned a little bit more about what was going on, it was like life and death, right? And so, we are more than happy to help people navigate the resources that they need, because once a person, and I work with some families, their kids are in residential now, when they come out, there'll be a seat waiting. So we're totally all about that. But a person has to be medically appropriate to participate. If they're not, then we can't successfully serve them. So every family that we work with will kind of start with, I'll speak to the academic part now in a minute. But as far as the school goes, the recovery part, we'll meet with the kid, we'll meet with the young person, and we'll meet with the family. And the meeting with the young person and the family is really about assessing and making sure that at this point, at this moment in time, that the school's a good fit. Hope is that school will always be a good fit at some point, but may not just be the right time at that moment. And most of that would probably be because maybe they're not medically in the greatest position to be able to do that successfully at this moment. So I want to talk a little bit about the academic piece and how we're going about that. We originally we've evolved, and COVID had a lot to do with how we kind of evolved to where we are now. I think in our original concept, we wanted people there every day, all the time. COVID really kind of flipped the script on a lot of things in life, including a lot of the variables that we had to focus on. And we needed to figure out who we were anyway. And like when we were doing the advisory boards. And so we went through all the different options. Like I said, public school probably wasn't a good fit because of discipline. Private school, we talked about that. But we landed on a public charter. And the reason that we did that was because funding and things would be available to anybody who needed it. And we decided, because we had the recovery experience, but not the academic experience, to partner with an organization called Michigan International Prep School. I have to say, when I first got involved in this, I was kind of like, some of the online parts of this, I'm a therapist by trade, face-to-face was kind of, my thing. I was excited to be here tonight. But, I gotta be honest with you, during the pandemic, I saw people on Zoom all the time, because you did what you had to do. And so, I learned, and I even did presentations that way and everything else. And I'm like, well, sometimes, maybe even though I'm a little bit older now, getting embracing that technology piece is something I can do. So, Michigan International Prep School was a very willing. They've done, as a school, they're really been doing some great work with kids across the state. But more importantly, they were really willing to kind of help kind of shepherd us into, where we'd like to be in a couple years, which is, kind of stand alone on our own. So in the interim, I would say they're kind of our academic mentor in a way. So they're going to be providing a lot of the academic experience, and they have a lot of resources that speak to that. And folders up, that if anybody wants to learn more about them, I'll just say, you can, the information's in there, that will speak to that. So how we've kind of adjusted to kind of make the school day work is we've decided that, to marshal our resources on the recovery front, is that we're going to start our check-in in the morning remotely on a daily basis. We're gonna run, the school's 9 through 12, 9 through 12th graders. We're gonna start a little bit later. Any feedback I've ever gotten from anybody in the years that I've been doing this work is, with this population, which I can certainly understand, is, doing 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning going to school doesn't work. So we're gonna start late, we're gonna do it late, we're gonna start like 9. And let the morning be kind of that virtual school time, get some stuff done once we've made sure that everybody that we're working with is ready to start the day. One of the nice things about the school, we don't have, like, if a person's anxiety and their, or their active kind of, they're in that state where they're just dysregulated, right, emotionally, they're not gonna do anything. So, as long as it takes, check-in could be 15 minutes, it could be an hour, it doesn't really matter, until everybody's ready, and everybody will affect everybody else, especially later in the day, when we bring everybody together in the afternoon, academic mentoring, recovery coaching, and then an alternative peer group, and any kind of programming that we do, including meetings. By the time, if a person's dysregulated or full of anxiety, they're not only not gonna do the work, then in the afternoon, it's gonna be challenging, to say the least. So, we wanna help get people to a place where they're being successful on a daily basis, and we wanna stay connected to whatever it is that's bothering them. We may not even be the right people to change that, but we wanna be attentive to it and make sure that they feel like, that their needs are being met there. I gotta tell you, one thing that really struck me when we went to a school in Massachusetts, right before the pandemic, and I had the fortune of being able to have some students talk to me, and I remember this young female, and she said, it'll be amazing if you get that school started, because you know what? This school is the only place that I feel safe. And I was like, wow, what kid says that about school, right? And I was just like, huh, I want that school, right? I want the school, I want our school to be like that. And that's so important, right? Because part of recovery is about feeling safe, feeling, taken care of, feeling like you have the support that you need. So we're very interested in that. We're very interested in creating that environment, keeping people engaged, keeping people moving. We also partnered or collaborated or connected with most of the treatment facilities in the area to get advisory support and collaboration, because we do have some organizations that do some great outpatient work in the region, both in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. And we wanted to make sure that we were connected with them so that if kids did need some resources, they had easy access. That there was a place that was very quick and comfortable, because another thing about this disease is waiting. Waiting is bad. Having to wait. And right now, I don't know if any of you have tried to access things that are normally. I always ran an organization where I was frustrated to hear that people had to wait 2 or 3 weeks to an appointment. It sounds like it's even worse now. This is a disease that can't wait 6 weeks for your first appointment. It can't. And so I don't want a school that looks like that either, and we won't have that. We need to be able to be responsive to whatever's going on with people, because this disease can't wait. It's very urgent that way. That's something that's kind of really thoughtful. We're trying to be thoughtful of and embedded into everything that we do, is we want to make sure that we're there and we're attentive, because we can't afford not to be. This disease just robs so many people of their lives and their livelihood and their families, and we're never the same, right? We've all lost people that we care about as part of raising guess that everybody's here. And, you know, even if the school does one little part to kind of help, you know, correct that, you know, even for, because we looked at it this way. You know, the idea for me when we started this is we wanted, in Farmington Hills, we wanted to, you know, I guess goals, if you will, is we wanted to get to a place where we had 20 students a year for about 5 years to get to about 80 kids. That was, in my mind, where we're located is kind of like right in the middle. So my original thought was, oh, this is cool, right? I mean, if you figure, even if you took 1 or 2 kids a school district in a 30-mile radius around us, like, we should be full in no time. Investment. The kids that we're probably most likely to work with are the kids that have probably been, you know, down to see their assistant principal or student assistance coordinator or dean. My wife's a dean, so, and, you know, or they've been to court, right? Or they've been, you know, suspended for doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. And by the time you kind of look at how much, you know, if somebody brought drugs to school and was trying to use with other kids, what's the ripple effect that it has on everybody else, right? So even 1 or 2 kids a district, which is certainly not reflective of the kids that probably needed it, but we'd be full in no time. Because, like, you know, and so for us, it's really about, you know, and we know that the kids that we want to work with, or we're positioned to work with, are not the same as the alternative school kids either. Because the alternative school kids, not all of them have drug and alcohol problems, and the kids with drug and alcohol problems still tend to not do good in alternative school either. And most of the folks that run those schools will tell you that. And so, I think we really have a niche. But I think our niche can be extraordinarily important and probably not just help the lives of the individual, but certainly in the community and the lives of other families and other districts and other parents, you know, that are kind of like collateral damage of addiction, right? Because there is collateral damage to addiction. It affects a whole lot of people. So that's kind of a space that we want to be in. And, you know, it occurred to me that when I talked to Dara about this earlier, that I said, you know, I want to leave time for questions, so I probably shouldn't do that. So yeah, so I'm gonna go quiet and people ask me anything. Anybody, anything you want to know? I will tell you this: if there's information that you want to take with you, there are folders. There is information about the school. There's mine and probably Michelle's contact info. There's all different kinds. If you don't have it now, but you think of it later, feel free. So, oh, and yeah, how do you want to handle that? Read them off.
You just want this for like formal things, right? You just want to know a little bit of information on these questions.
Yeah. Yeah, if anybody has anything they want to add, I can't remember how we did that last time.
Yeah, we did, so, all right.
Yeah, you
If
did
you
explain.
can hear me okay. On your seats, you have a couple questions. And so, Brian was just wondering if you had anything that you wanted to
Yeah,
answer
that's
on
right,
here
that's
so
right.
that they could get your feedback. Some of yours, if you have one that's cut off, let me know, because this one is not, and there's a couple others here that are not, but I'm happy to swap them out for you. But go ahead and ask questions.
Yeah, please. Hi.
How or will transportation be provided?
Thank you for asking that, because that's one of those frequently asked questions. So, this is a longer answer than you probably want. So, when we originally went into this, I gotta tell you the whole thing, that's the problem. When we originally went into this, our idea was that by year 3, we were gonna do pickup points, because we knew that transportation would be an issue, right? For a lot of people. So, a couple things happened. COVID happened, which kind of changed our approach a little bit, right? And then, there's something that we have enough flexibility right now to have this conversation. For one, if transportation's an issue, I still think someone should call us anyway, because maybe there's a solution, and we just need to figure it out together. So it's possible, right? I'm not saying, we don't, I can tell you, we don't have the transportation issue solved, it'll be an issue unless, one of the other things now we've been talking about, I'll call it a blessing of COVID, is, my original thought was to just keep building up one direction in that campus to enrollment of 80. Now, I'm wondering if maybe we should make lateral moves, get to about 20, and then move into, do a satellite to different communities, right? But the first thing we gotta do is get, I guess kind of a plea, if you will, like, it would be very helpful if we got to, 15 to 20 students by the end of the year so that we could show we're making a mark in this space, right? So we need to get there. Because I think that shows durability and that we can keep moving. It would take us, the way we were planning it before, 3 years to even be able to kind of address transportation. So that is gonna be a liability. The only thing I can tell you is we are pretty much, I would say, about as middle as you can get of Macomb, Wayne, Oakland.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, it's not the worst place it could be. I mean, it's definitely reachable, but yes, we know, yeah, it's an issue. Yeah, look.
So I wasn't entirely clear, is the academic piece, over like Zoom or something, or is your plan to have the academic teachers actually on the campus?
Yeah, so there'll be academic mentor and perhaps even teacher time on campus, but a majority of the school portion of it will be online. Yeah. So yeah, you will have direct access and contact to those folks that way. So, yep. 9 Mile between Inkster and Millwell.
Are you working with all the high schools? Like, how are you getting the word out to, like, the vice principals and things like that at the other high schools in the area? Like, is there a consortium or something that?
Yeah, so the advisory boards that we developed in part, that we have so for example, Randy Leva, who was, I think he retired. Yeah, he was superintendent of Wayne County Schools. We had a couple of key people from Oakland schools, one from Macomb. Plus, we had some superintendents, and then now we're kind of talking to all the people who would be, really, what we were told is that parents make a lot of decisions, like, in August, and it was probably a good time for us to get out here, and, like, it was timely to be here. But to get to a lot of the folks that might refer and say, we're open, we're ready, here's what we're doing exactly. If you have a family that might be interested, why don't maybe you want to have them talk to us and see if it's a good fit. So we're in the process of doing all of that. That's pretty much the time, that's what we're doing now. Yeah.
And my question has to do with the schools themselves, the high schools in the general area, say Wayne County.
Sure.
I live in Garden City.
Okay.
Have you ever considered possibly going to the Board of Education meetings? Those are all televised too, throughout the community.
So,
Repeat the question, Brian.
yeah, so the question really was raised going to Board of Education meetings and talking. That definitely is a possibility of something we could do, and then you're right, they are televised.
I guess I meant like individually, like say, go to Garden City.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Like me, like for example, I come and do a presentation at the.
Yes.
It's an interesting thought. I
I know
mean,
Garden City would be interested.
sure,
Derek Fisher's really good to deal with.
okay. Yeah, no, I,
Darlene Jablonowski, the president.
yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, we know some of the school boards pretty well, but that would be, yeah, thank you for that. That's an interesting thought. I mean, yeah, we know we're doing heavy lifts right now, we're meeting with pretty much everybody.
I'll be writing that name down and emailing that person.
Right.
For the next meeting, yeah.
Yeah, oh, no, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're doing meet and greets at the school too, just so people can come in, and we wanna do that with families too. We wanna be able to, and that's another thing too, because you good point to your point about going to school board meetings, for example. If there's someone that's in the district or in the community or, we've had everybody out, we've had superintendents, we've had police chiefs, we've had judges, I mean, whoever's referring, they're gonna have to feel comfortable. Like, this is our trust year. This is the year that we know it's on us to build trust. So we need, that responsibility falls on us to the community to say, look, this is new, there's a lot, my daughter's sitting right next to me. Like, you make a decision about school, that's like everything, right? We agonized last year. Farmington gave us the early cutoff on whether or not to go remote. She was in 8th grade. And so, I kind of I made the decision for her to stay remote, and I think she would tell you that it was not the best decision probably for her.
Oh, you mean in 8th grade?
Yes. In 8th
Oh,
grade.
I thought you were saying I have to vote for high school.
No, for 8th grade, no, and that was probably not the best decision, but, like we, as parents, that decision of anything you do about school is so important. So we know we have to earn the trust of the community. Like, it's great that we open the school, but we owe it to you to build that trust, and that's what we're gonna do. So.
I just wanted to mention about in the public school system, the school boards and the unfortunate part, and especially in the middle school and high schools, where they're incorporating, a lot of the areas they're incorporating, using youth officers are coming back into the schools, to handle a lot of the addiction or the problems relating to addiction. And the unfortunate part is the guidance counselors that help with their college and military, whatever they want to do in the future, they're not really equipped with the addiction. They kind of tell the family, well, you find someone in the community that can help, because we're not equipped to take on this responsibility. And then the stigma that the young person has to carry through all those 4 years or through junior high in high school is tremendous. And then they get lost in the system. It's such a kind of a catch-22 where there's no solution to any of this.
Well, you reminded me of something I just read that was really interesting that hadn't really occurred to me until I read it. Across the country, we've made the effort, and I'm not trying to bring this up to politics, I just thought the article was interesting. We put all this effort into decriminalization of marijuana in particular, right? And that one of the things that happened with this, and I gotta be honest with you, I don't have a strong opinion about it. Like, I work with the 10% of people that have addiction problems, that's who I work with. So the rest, whether it's criminalized or not, is not really, I don't have super strong opinions about it. Some people do, and that's fine. But what I will say is that an unintended consequence of the decriminalization, this article talked about, was the effect on young people. Not just because it made it more acceptable, but because it didn't change anything for them. Like, because when you're young, it's not decriminalized. So a lot of the focus now about criminalizing drug use falls on kids. So there's kind of this disproportionate shift towards kids, because that's where the criminal activity goes on. So unintended consequence is a focus on kids. I never thought of that, ever. I was like, wow, that's an interesting thought. So now, a population, a group that doesn't have a voice, that doesn't have a whole lot of options to treatment, is now getting a whole lot more attention for their drug use. Wow, that sucks. Because that just makes the problem. We used to complain, right? It's an interesting thought, because we used to complain, kids, nobody ever pays attention to it. Well, now if they start paying attention to it, it shows that we don't have enough resources out there and support. That's what it's going to show. So, and it's fascinating thinking coming out of the pandemic. I have no idea what we're faced with people's, mental health coming into the school year. I mean, it's hard to even imagine. It's hard to imagine where a young person is at, and where drugs and alcohol. Yeah.
I was wondering now, it sounds like, of course, you're going to be opening up this fall, right?
Yep.
So in this case, I know you're saying school at one point, and then calling it something else, but is this going to be something like in a school where they go in, like you say, you start at 9 o'clock and they're out of there by whatever, 3:30, 5 o'clock, and then they go home? them every day?
We're gonna start seeing them early in the afternoon.
Yeah.
The morning stuff, the check-in will be virtual. In the afternoon, they could, we're running more on a 9 to 5 kind of schedule, and honestly, with after-school programming, and alternative peer groups and opportunities for meetings, if they choose, they could be there a lot later.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get to is that, okay, say 9 to 5 is for Walker. What portion of that day is gonna be for the academics, and what portion is that gonna be to help them with addiction?
So, I guess my initial response to that is there's no,
Well, not set in stone, but.
no, but I mean, it's gonna be hard to separate those two things even at all. What I can tell you is that if you're asking me, is the school day basically gonna be kind of like 9-ish to 3, roughly? Yeah, but recovery is gonna be so embedded in all of that, we have enough we have enough flexibility to kind of meet people where they're at during the
So
school.
kind of intertwine the
Absolutely.
recovery with the class?
Absolutely, that's exactly what we're looking
That
at.
makes sense,
Yeah, that's exactly the place that we want to land, because everything's an opportunity to learn there, right? And it's not just gonna be, if somebody doesn't do a math assignment,
What about them kind of having people come in, maybe, I don't know, who knows, people with significant clean time, and even ones that are there in 1 year, because, see, the whole thing with people that come, only have maybe up to a year, is how they relate to the young people.
absolutely.
So in turn, when they come in there, say, if you call it recess time,
Right?
something similar to that, where they can talk to them, like hands-on, whether it's in the auditorium, a half hour in the auditorium or whatever, be part of the recovery process. So they're hearing, well, some may call it testimonial, some may call it just telling your story, whatever you want to call it, that's fine.
So this is the community, and this is the community input that we want, because this is the kind of activities that as people show interest and want to, be a part of that in some way, we can do that.
Let's see, because I'm not finished with this, I'm sorry.
Yep.
When I used to be an H&I full panel leader, and I was in a place where they have, they're COVID, okay? And it didn't matter what drug you use, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever. And I don't like to differentiate those, I just like drugs is drugs.
I'm like you.
So what I try to do is get somebody with a significant clean time, tell their kind of side of the story, perspective.
Sure.
Somebody with a lot less time, a female and a male. Because this all pertains when you got females sitting in the room, that just not a male is talking to them.
Right.
And the same thing vice versa, when you got somebody up to it like a year, because in H&I, you can start talking to people at places at 6 months. So those are the people that can relate to these people regardless, they're just coming in, whether like you said, they're just starting to, they're still using maybe, whether it's just marijuana or whatever you want to say, because kids are doing anything and everything at an early age now.
Right.
But something similar to that is what I'm saying, would be, I think, helpful.
Yeah, I like it. No, I appreciate it.
What about educating parents and
Yeah.
families?
So-
Because from my perspective, it was such a foreign and mysterious and crazy, thing
Huge.
to try to figure out.
Huge point, right? We have a lot, we have a couple different platforms in mind. Obviously, we're gonna do some face-to-face stuff together with them. I do an addiction lecture series that's done remotely still at this point. Karen's here, my co-partner in that for a lot of years. We can also, we can utilize this platform here. That's what I want the school to be able to be flexible enough to utilize all the resources available so that, the parents have that knowledge base, right? Knowing what to do is everything, right? When parents can address things so much better when they're not trying to navigate all the crap the hard way.
And even to be able to work with other parents.
Yeah,
To
and work
talk
with
to
other parents,
that-
right.
So you feel like you're
Yeah.
not alone
No, I totally see us in that
It's
space.
like
Yeah, that's where we need to be, yeah.
in their own recovery.
And-
Yeah, exactly.
And that, yeah, we obviously
Yeah,
support,
but it's for
yeah, and we support,
lessons.
yeah, we would support a family in that space, and we definitely want parents to be able to, be able to make those quick decisions when they need to, and be that resource about helping them navigate that. So yeah, we definitely want them to learn more about addiction too, and all that stuff. Yeah.
I am wondering if, you said this is a public charter school, right?
Correct.
Okay, so is there an opportunity for kids to participate in sports with the public school in their district, or if that's something that they're into, is there a way to, you know?
At this point, I don't know how that would happen, but what I can tell you is this. I mean, who knows where we are a few years from now? All I can tell you is I'm very excited thus far that we have had nothing but great experiences with all the public schools. I don't know where we end up with this. I mean, maybe if we make lateral moves instead, maybe if this goes well, maybe we can work with a public school. And do that. I don't know.
Right, for not just sports, but other, like,
Right.
band,
I mean-
some other thing that the kids are into that,
Yeah.
but won't be available.
Well, and definitely one of the things that we're looking forward to is having, you know, when you talk about learning, Michelle said it best. I mean, at some point, if recovery's not fun, why do it?
Right.
So we do want, you know, and if you're not moving towards a goal, you know, so we definitely want to provide those opportunities for people to get to know things that they like, things that they might want to do. Definitely supportive of activities, period. I know that, you know, since we've been talking about this concept, I mean, everything from the trades to colleges, everyone else has said, geez, we want to be a part of this. I mean, like, somehow. And so, you know, who knows where we end, or where we land exactly.
I have a follow-up. I have a second
Yeah.
question. Are you going to do any young people meetings, even after school hours? And
Absolutely.
open to the public?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll let you.
That's what the main focus of the alternative peer groups are gonna be meetings, and we're gonna welcome someone to be there.
Okay,
So they can create that community.
yeah, awesome.
It's a huge focus of APG.
So I have a question that is probably gonna be a little difficult to answer, only because it pertains to marijuana, and not every kid that is smoking excessive amounts of marijuana obviously needs to go to Wellspring Academy, but, you know, there's that fine line of, you know, your kid's smoking the marijuana, and they start smoking the wax, and that becomes very complicated to know where that line is when your kid is just experimenting, making bad decisions versus needing to get some assistance from other people, like,
Actually, I think I can
calls like that.
give you a clear answer. I can give you a clear answer on that, I think. So maybe I do need to clarify this point. So, you know, we can assess people as far as where they're at, but we're not requiring a diagnosis. So you don't have to be diagnosed. So to put more clearly, you know, if a kid wants recovery, so the thing we know about person number one, he wants recovery, he's struggling to figure it out. But that doesn't mean that, you know, and he has some willingness, we'll get him there. Not every kid is gonna be at the same stage of where they're at. If a kid and a family are saying, we wanna do this, you know, there's drug use that's caused problems, okay, as long as you meet, you know, medical guidelines, participate, you're not like using yourself into, you know, a stupor every day, as long as you're not putting your life or someone else's life at risk every day, you're showing willingness and a family that wants to participate in recovery stuff and get some education, we're gonna give you a shot. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean if that kid gets worse, we're gonna be like, look, you gotta go get some outpatient, or look, you gotta go to, if they progress, right? I mean,
Well, so what would be your recommendation, because we do get these calls a lot, right? So would the recommendation be go through the police department, because they have that,
you stepped out.
you know, they have that program for assessment, like, I'm just looking for the right things to.
So if at this point, the place I think we would like to be, you know, if a parent's struggling, especially, you know, if they're really, you know, kind of like worried about their kid's future academically, drugs and alcohol have been an issue in this space, is fine, what you're talking about. They can give me a call, they can give us a call. We can at least, talk to them about, I mean, like, we've been at this a long time. I mean, you know, even if they don't know what to do, at least, you know, and Karen and I in the lecture series, this is what we do. I mean, too, there, I mean, like, we help people find what to do. And, you know, because, you know, even if the school's not the right place for them, there's a pretty good chance we can at least get them somewhere. So, you know, we want to be that resource. We're good with that. And especially with this age group, because they tend to, nobody ever knows what to do.
Right.
So,
What is your oldest age?
that's interesting that you asked that, because Michigan National Prep School can take kids up to 19 or 20. So, I don't necessarily see that being kind of our space, but because we can do some remote things, and we've talked about this already, you know, I would like to see in the first couple months what we're gonna get, but we definitely have the ability and the space to be able to kind of keep things safe for now. I don't think that's where we'll start. Maybe that's something that we build out into later.
Do you have restrictions from being like a public charter, like from like the state or anything? I mean, how old can they, you know, would they still want to graduate, but it's, you know.
Right, yeah, I know. I'm just saying with the public charter, we're kind of like working with, it's there, that's the space they land in, so, yeah.
Well, what I see have heard is that, see, there's a lot of people that don't graduate, period.
That's right.
So who knows if they come back in at, say, for the heck of it, they come in 21 to 25, I'm just using those numbers.
Yeah.
They go to alternative schools because they don't matter, but they want to finish their school.
Right.
So this is what I think she's kind of getting at is the age.
Well, I mean, there's two, you know.
Right.
So Michigan International Prep actually works with people up until like 21, 22.
So they can do that, yeah, separate
We can
from
still
us.
provide the education.
Yeah, they can still get that, yeah, that's
I
true.
think for
She's right.
older, for young adults.
Yep.
So we can definitely put them through, yeah.
And what if the parents aren't involved?
Oh, if you mean after the age 18, or just
Well,
period?
And you're, you know, you're saying something.
That's an interesting, we're definitely not gonna turn a kid away. I mean, I definitely have to figure out what that supports are.
What if that's, you know, you said that the school's the only safe place.
Yeah, and I have to say, Wellspring as an organization works with a lot of kids in the reunification space too. I don't see why we wouldn't at all. I mean, in fact, again, kind of going back to you know, I think the best thing to do is just give us a call and we'll figure it out. I mean, like, there's a lot of unknowns, there's a lot of learning this year, right? Like, how are we gonna navigate some transportation issues? What if a kid doesn't have parents? I mean, yeah.
I mean, as a student in recovery, my parents weren't involved.
Right,
They were out there using, but they weren't involved in my
Right.
recovery at all. But I have so much support through the school system and my recovery community that I was successful anyway. And so everything that we're going to be providing is everything that I have available to me that helped me to be, obviously my parents supported me, but they're like, do the thing, you know? And, so, yeah, I think everything they have in place to do through the school and our supports is going to suffice without parent involvement.
I think we're gonna get to wrapping up.
Yeah, it's 9:30 is the particular time. I mean,
If you guys make them quick, I'll try to.
I'm just going to teacher in high school, and I just was wondering if someone else in here, when I do bridges and that, and I just wondered how do you, he's gone, is there a plan for those bridges?
Yep, no, that process is all in place. We still have, yep,
There's somebody, a consultant come in to do it.
yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, great, thank you for
We
asking.
really have a lot of-
That's pretty normal.
It's good you have that.
I deal with a friend that mentors in Alateen, and sometimes, you know, it's the parents sometimes that
Sure.
are the real issue in those regards, whereas they're out using, and the kid is getting to that point where they're starting to think about maybe using too.
Right.
Are those kids eligible for your program?
I think that there's a space that we might be able to help give them some support. So yeah, probably. Anyway, I want to thank you all for your time. I know that was a lot, but it was great to be back. Please feel free, we got stuff up there if you want to take stuff about school.
So excited to